Introduction to AutoCAD. So what is AutoCAD? AutoCAD was first developed by Autodesk back in 1982, and the name AutoCAD, CAD, stands for Computer Aided Design. AutoCAD's globally used by surveyors, engineers, drafters, architects. It's used by product development teams, medical professionals, educational institutions. It's a broad, very broad software. In fact, it's still the most widely used CAD software in the world by market share. And it's a vector-based program, meaning that it's not pixel-based, doesn't pixelate. Before CAD, drafting and modeling was done manually. The image on the left-hand side depicts a drafting office of some sort, probably engineering, before the days of AutoCAD where everything was manually hand-drawn. It was an incredibly time-consuming task, which results in a lot of costly errors, especially when changes are happening on the fly. And with the development of AutoCAD, the process of modeling and designing got digitized and simplified, allowing an infinite amount of changes in quick succession. So AutoCAD is the first of 4 softwares that we learn in this course, the others being Adobe Photoshop, Rhino 3D, and Autodesk Revit. Taking a look at the interface generally, as it will be configured within our course, what you're looking at currently is a typical modeling window of AutoCAD. And what we can see across the top are tabs that are currently highlighted. These include Home, Annotate, Manage, Output, etc. And underneath the tabs is the ribbon. And the ribbon responds to whatever tab that you're currently clicked on. So at the moment, we're on the Home tab, and so we have our typical home options or commands such as line, text, dimension, layer manager, property managers, whatnot. And then the Annotate tab is more specifically detailed towards annotation commands such as text and dimensions, multi-leaders, revision clouds, etc. And really within this course, those are the only 2 tabs that we'll need to understand and that we'll be going through. AutoCAD has a vast amount of capabilities. However, everything that we need to do and everything that 99% of industry requires to do can really happen within those 2 tabs only. The big blue screen, which is currently showing there with all the color drawings, this is classified as your model space. This is where you actually draw, model, and document your project. On the left-hand side, we have the properties windows, and that is a reporting capability that AutoCAD has. And basically, all it means is it reports back any metadata or any properties of the current object selected. As an example, there's nothing selected. It says that at the top. However, the last object that was selected was a hatch layer, and it tells me the color, its plot style, etc. It will even tell me if it's a line. It will tell me its length. If it's a hatch, it will tell me its area. Next to that is the Layers Properties Manager. We'll go over the significance of layers and how they work within AutoCAD a bit later, but that is the Properties Manager for layer controls. In the bottom left-hand corner, you've got these little tabs. The first one you can see says Model, and thereafter there's 00 Cover Sheet, and then one for Plans and Elevations, etc. And what they are, they're the ability to flick between the model view, where you actually create the content, and the sheets where you lay out and document your drawings. And by clicking on those, you are taken to what is called paper space. And as the name implies, it is basically just a reflection of the sheet. It is where you organize your drawings for printing and for sharing. And it's in this space where you actually scale the drawings to the appropriate sizes and arrange them on the sheets. In the bottom right-hand corner, you would have what can be classified as snaps and controls. This is where you can turn, this is like these controlling actions or the detail in which you actually model and draw. So, you have grid controls, whether you want to see a grid that can assist you, whether you want to draw just orthogonally in 90-degree intervals. You've got polar tracking, which will snap to certain directions, and then you have object snaps, such as being able to snap to endpoints of lines, midpoints, tangent, quad, etc. So some of the key concepts to really get your head around in AutoCAD. The first one is line weights, and line weights is a property that's assigned to a graphical object, hatch, leader, or dimension that results in thicker or darker lines. And the line weights are really there to improve the legibility of a drawing. You can see this little excerpt of a section. The timber section, the studs are cut at a thicker line weight than anything in projection, which then really make the drawings pop. So as an example, the timber studs and the roof are shown thick because you're actually slicing through those within the section. However, the truss is in projection, so it's at a thinner line weight. And these line weights typically in Australian drafting standards are denoted as the little the little insert there depicts. So, 0.1, 0.35, 0.5, 1.4, and they're all expressed in either point of a millimeter or of millimeters, like 1.4 millimeters, etc. AutoCAD offers 3 basic ways to control line weights. The first one, which is a little bit more of an old school method, is where the colors of the lines control the line weight. So everything that's green will be 0.35, everything that's yellow will be 0.25, etc. However, the method that we use is by layer. So that means that you can have the same color line on 2 different layers, but it's the layer itself that controls the line weight. And that is more of a modern way to control line weights within AutoCAD. The next concept to get your head around is layers. And so layers are the primary method for organizing objects in a drawing by function or purpose. Layers can reduce the visual complexity of a drawing and improve its display performance, hiding information you don't need. A good example here is that you may have a construction drawing that shows pipes and ducts and steel beams and posts and then walls, and these would all be basically just all line work, just hundreds of lines. And it's very hard to draw that information without some sort of control to assign what objects belong to what, and layers would be a good example of where you can do that. Before you start a drawing, it's usually a good idea to plan out what your layers will consist of. As an example, if you're doing just a standard house plan, you might have a layer for walls or for doors, fixtures, electrical items, furniture, and so on. The left-hand side here is an extract of the layer system that we use for this assignment. And one thing to keep in mind is that layers really do change from every single architectural practice or every single business in general. There's no right or wrong way to use layers. And in this instance, you can see, as an example, everything that's prefixed with the letter A stands for architectural. And then as you go down, about 3/4 of the way down, you can see E-light. E would be for like an electrical contractor. And then L for landscape. These are just some examples. So if we had S, like S would be structural, and you might have S steel or S concrete or S beams or S columns. They're just some examples of how you can break up your drawing. In this case, we use pens, and so you can see A-pen-9, A-pen A13, and what that means is it's an architectural pen. So A for architectural, pen as in just a general pen, so it's not really associated to any item in particular. And then the number next to it is the line weight. The other item we can see looking from left to right across and taking, say, A pen 13 with the green tick. The green tick denotes that that's the current layer that we're on. The light bulb next to that denotes whether we can see the layer or not. The sun icon means that it's editable. If we click on that, it turns into a snowflake, and that means it's a frozen layer, which means we can't select it, which helps when we're trying to work with complex drawings and we don't want to edit certain items. The color is next to that, and then the line type, in this case, is just a continuous line, but we could change that to a dotted line, dashed line, whatever it may be. And then the line weight associated. And of course, being a pen 13, the line weight is 0.13 millimeter, 0.13 of a millimeter. And then there are some other options about the plot styles or the printing style of that current layer. So use the layer properties managers to actually manage your layers. We'll go through that shortly and where that's kept and how to dock that and auto minimize that. The next concept to get your understanding over is blocks. So really what blocks are, they're just named group of objects that act as single 2D or 3D objects. 99% of the time within AutoCAD they're 2D, and in our case 100% of the time they're 2D. And you can use them to create repeated content, such as drawing symbols, common components, and standard details. Blocks will help you to save time and maintain consistency, and they'll actually reduce the file size. And you can create your own CAD blocks, or you could choose pre-made ones online. So when we take a look at blocks in a little bit more detail later in the course, you'll find that blocks are just, they're just lines that are grouped together and then saved as a block. Take example, second from the top left-hand side, you've got a long conference table, and that's a 12-person conference table. And really, that consists of just lines that build chairs, and then the chairs are copied, and then you've got the table itself. But even the table itself being that sort of elongated rectangle with the arc on either side, you'd be looking at least 4 to 6 lines just for that object, plus maybe 10 or 12 lines per chair. So that adds up pretty quickly to being a significant amount of lines just to make one table with the chairs, one conference table. Now let's say we're doing an office development and we want to lay these out. We have multiple conference rooms. That's hundreds, very quickly turning into thousands of individual lines that would need to be selected, copied, rotated, etc. So it's far easier to select them all and then block them, and then you're able to copy them around much easier. And the way that AutoCAD stores the information, even though they are made up of individual lines, hundreds of individual lines, AutoCAD will just understand it basically as one object. So AutoCAD will run a lot smoother this way. You can then edit the block, and when you edit the blocks, like let's say at the moment that's a 12-person conference table, we wanted to make it a little bit longer and add another 2 chairs or another 4 chairs. If we did that once, it would update all of the blocks everywhere. Whether if we were just copying and pasting a bulk amount of objects, every single one of those conference tables we would have to go around and update, which would be incredibly time consuming. The final concept to understand are commands within AutoCAD, and it's really quite simple. Commands are simply typed into the keyboard. There are buttons that you can use for the same command. However, it's far easier just to type them into the keyboard. And it is very simplistic in that you just think about what operation you want to do and type it in, and most likely there'll be a command for it. Whether it be, say, I want to delete something, type in delete, and I think erase will appear. Type in a line, and you want to get a line, type in line, you'll get a line. You want a circle, type in circle, you get circle, and so on and so forth. You want to move something, type in move, and you'll move it. It's generally what you think it is. Although AutoCAD will guess what the command is that you want, kind of like the Google search engine. So if you type in L, it will automatically, by default, go to line. If you type in, say, TR, it will come up with trim. And if you type in I, it will then come up with a shorter list, obviously with trim at the top. So it's pretty intuitive in that regard. And as time goes on, the software learns what your favorite commands are and will put them to the top of the list. So it will get to a point where, let's say you use trim so often that there's almost no other command you use that begins with the letter T. As soon as you type in T, trim would be the first command AutoCAD thinks you're going to use. The other concept and other guide to help you out is on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got this blue box at the bottom, and what that is that's a screen grab from the command window at the bottom of the modeling space in AutoCAD. And those lines there that are white text in a grey box, they're commands that were previously already executed. So in this instance, what I've done is I've selected an object to rotate. So here it's saying that it's found one object and I've selected it. And then it's asked me to specify the base point, which would be like the axis that the object rotates around. And in this case, I've already done that. So now in the white box, it's giving me the next command, which is essentially a question. AutoCAD prompts you to answer the question each step of the way with a command. So in this instance, it's asking either specify the rotation angle by moving my hand around, my mouse around, or I can type in the number if I want to. So I could type in 90, I could type in 35, whatever it may be. And then when I hit enter or spacebar, the command is complete. Okay, so let's go through some of the most basic commands and navigations within AutoCAD. So what I've done up until now is I've gone on to Student Web and I've downloaded the Assessment 1 template file, and that is under the Assessment Task 1 group, and the file name is at1-template-001, and we can see that at the top of the page. All I've done is simply downloaded it and then double clicked on it to open it within AutoCAD. Conversely, you can open AutoCAD first and then go File, Open, or click on the big A and go File, Open there too. But when you do open it, it will open up and look a lot like this. So what we're looking at now is the file was last saved in paper space. That's why we're seeing the sheet in front of us and not the modeling space. So to go back to the modeling space, I'm going to click on the modeling tab in the bottom left hand corner, and we're now within that modeling space. Now it's hard to see what is going on at the moment because we're just in one big infinite zone. We can't see how big anything is or any relevant scale. So what we'll do is we'll start off by drawing a few lines and then we'll go through navigation. So I'm going to click on the Home tab and then I'm going to click on Line, and I'm literally just going to click at one point and then I might type in 3000 on my keyboard and then hit enter and then hit escape. So we've just drawn a line 3 meters long. Remember that in AutoCAD, basically in all architectural or all Australian drafting convention, bar say rail or perhaps surveying or civil, they denote to measurements in meters, whether architecture, engineering, and most construction, building construction definitely is all in millimeters. So we've just drawn a line that's 3 meters long, and then hit escape to complete the command after hitting enter. So to zoom in and out of the drawing is pretty simple. You just use the scroll wheel on your mouse, and when you do that, you can see we're scrolling out from the drawing. And to pan around, I'm going to hold down my middle mouse button, and you can see the little crosshairs, which is my selection icon. You can see where my mouse is like a crosshair. It changes to a little hand when I'm in pan mode. So zoom in and out on your scroll wheel, pan around, middle mouse button, holding down. So we've drawn that line, and to select that line, you can either click on it, and then to deselect it, you can hit escape. So let's go again and draw another line. So this time I'm going to use the command. So the typing commands, I'll type in L, and you can see the first command that comes up on that list of commands is line. You can either hit spacebar or enter to execute a command. I prefer spacebar personally. And you can see in the command bar at the bottom of the screen down here, it's giving me instructions. And the first instruction is specify the first point of the line. So I just click anywhere, and then it's asking me to specify the next point of the line. So I might go out to here. And that blue number you're seeing there is the length of that line. So I can either try and eyeball it, or I can type in a number. Almost 100% of the time you're going to type in a number. As you can see, it goes down to 4 decimal places. So being able to free draw down to 4 decimal places is basically impossible. So this time let's go 3.9 meters and then hit enter. When we do that, the command will continue. So we can continue to draw if we want. So I might draw down, say 1.8 meters, hit enter, and then come across again 3.9 meters, hit enter, and then back up to complete this rectangle. Once I'm done with the command, I can just hit escape, and now that's done. So again, going back to selection, we can select this box one line at a time. I can hit escape, or there are 2 different cross methods of selection. So if I click once on my mouse and move my hand to the left, I'll get this green selection box, and basically what that means is anything that even comes close or touches that box, just touches that box, will be selected. So in this regard, you can see these 2 lines are now selected. However, if I do the same thing again, but move my hand left to right, I get a blue box. And what that means is that everything that is wholly within the blue box will be selected. As an example, if I do that this time and I want to select this top line here, you can see that nothing's been selected until the entirety of that line is within the blue box. CAD is also auto multiple select. So what that means is as I click on multiple items, it will just keep picking up more items. I don't have to hold down shift or control or anything like that. In fact, if I want to deselect items, I can hold down shift and I'll minimize or deselect items. So to select them, I'm not touching anything, just clicking on them. To deselect, holding down shift, and this allows me to deselect individual items. Otherwise, what will happen is if I select these and I find out I actually don't want this line in the middle, if I hit escape, it will deselect all items. Okay, so let's go through some of these commands and some of the shape operation. So we just started off with line there. Let's use next a polyline. So we can see when we drew this little rectangle here, each one of these is an individual line, which can be pretty time consuming when you need to edit these lines or you want to move them around or copy them, etc. So what we use then is a polyline, and that's the next command in the home screen, in the home ribbon, or PL is the shortcut. I'll hit enter, and what we'll do is we'll just draw another rectangle, maybe 6 meters, zoom out, pan around, down maybe 3 meters, across 6, oops. And you can see, if I've clicked and you can see I've drawn that on an angle accidentally, I just hit Control Z on my keyboard and it will take me back to the last line. And then complete the loop and then hit escape. Now when I go to select this rectangle, you see that it selects as one item because it's a polyline. So it's one closed curve, one closed line, rather than 4 individual lines. Okay. Then next to that, let's try the circle command. So the standard circle, I can just type in circle on my keyboard and hit enter, and I can start drawing. And if we look down in the command box, you can see circle. Specify the radius of the circle, or you can change it to diameter. So in this instance, let's use a radius, and we'll call it maybe 1500. But what that means is that's a 3 meter diameter circle. And if we click on this little drop down box, you'll see we have all these different ways of drawing circles. So center radius, center diameter. So if I do center diameter again, and let's go, I'll do the exact same circle and type in 1500. This time you'll see it's 1500 diameter, not 1500 radius from the center. Next to that is arc, and there are a multitude of different ways to draw arcs that I encourage you to experiment with. 3-point arcs are pretty simple, so once to start, once where the arc apex is, and once to complete, as an example. But there are other type of arcs, such as like start end radius. So I could say, there's my start, there's my end of the arc, and then I can extend, or I can push in or pull out the radius as I see fit. So I could even type in, say, like, it would have to be less than 3000, so 3000, something like that. And you'll see the distance between here and here is 3000. So the closer that goes, the closer that comes up to here, the more aggressive the bend would be. Okay. Then we have other items such as different rectangles, polygons, ellipses. So you can take like an ellipse here, start, end, or radius, and then the further up and down I push my mouse will be the other diameter or the other radius. So if I typed in like 1000, that means this is 2000 high. By the way, to delete items, it's relatively simple. Either select an item and hit delete on the keyboard, or you can select an item, type in E for erase, and then hit spacebar. So let's go again and we'll draw like a small house plan, just the outside line of a house plan. So I'm going to go PL on my keyboard, and I'm going to go start from here, and let's draw across maybe 5 meters, and then down 5 meters, across 2.5, down 6.5. And I'm going to use some guides to help me finish this off. So you can see we get like these little green dash lines. That's the polar tracking I was talking about earlier in terms of snaps. So it's guiding me to, I think it's every 10-degree interval or 15-degree interval, to make sure that I'm not drawing off on some weird angle. What that also allows me to do is to snap or hover over items and gives me invisible guides. So if I hold my mouse over the end point of this line and then move my hand down, you can see this little green dash line appears to help me guide where this line needs to end. So when I find the intersection, you'll see they both appear. I'll click that, and then I can come back up to here and click the end point to complete the box, and then hit escape. So let's go through some of these modify commands briefly and see what we can do with this. So let's use the offset tool first. So I'm going to type in OF on my keyboard and go off. And now it's asking me the distance that I want to offset. So in this instance, let's offset, say maybe 250 mil. So 250, and then hit enter. And then I'm going to click on these lines. And because it's a polyline, all of them select at once. And when I move my hand outside the building, the extra line would be created outside the building. Move my hand in, creates inside the building. So I'll go inwards, and that's now done. And you'll see that command works on everything, like circles, the other rectangle, and then on here, you'll see because this was individual lines, not polylines, it will work, but on an individual line basis. So before continuing with the rest of our modify tools, let's take a quick look at snaps within AutoCAD and what we have turned on. So as I alluded to in the earlier presentation, the bottom right hand corner, we have our snaps and controls. And we can see down here, we have this little angle that's showing, which is called show snapping reference lines. We then have restrict cursor to specific angles, polar tracking, which is on, and we have object snaps. So as an example, if I click this little arrow next to it, you can see the tick boxes appear of which snaps are currently turned on. Now, yours may not look like this by default, but what I would do right now is I would be saving this or stopping the video and making yours look like this, except for one, which is intersection. You want that on. So that's how yours should look in AutoCAD. But what I will do is I'm going to turn off intersection as an example to show you how these work. So I'm going to take two lines and I'm going to cross them over like this. So if I go to draw a line with all those snaps currently turned on that you can see here, I'm going to pick up a lot of information within these lines. I'm going to pick up the end point, which is shown with the green square. I'll pick up the midpoint of this line, which is shown with that triangle. And actually, to sort of exemplify that a bit further, I'll drag the line. So I'll do that again. So the midpoint of that line is there, and that's specified by the triangle. However, or what that means firstly is I can go from endpoint to endpoint, or I could even go midpoint of this line, pick that up to endpoint of that line. It allows a lot of control over where you're drawing. However, you'll see here that you've got this cross or this intersection, and I can't pick up that point there. So what I need to do is go down to here and make sure intersection is turned on, and when I do that, you'll see straight away it comes up with intersection as a green cross, and that allows me to draw straight from that midpoint or straight from the intersection of those two lines. Without snaps, the job becomes pretty hard. So I'm going to draw a polyline, and I'll just draw like a box. Well, actually, I'll draw it with lines. In fact, I'll draw like one line there and one line there. Now that's with snaps turned on. So I'll do that again. One line there, another line, and you can see it's snapped to the endpoint, and that's all good. And no matter how close I zoom into that corner, we know those two lines are welded, they're connected together. If I do that again, but this time turn off snaps, I'll go from say here to here, and then I'll go from there to there. And it won't take long to zoom in. You'll see how I'm actually nowhere near the actual end of this line and the beginning of that line meeting. It's very, very hard to snap without the snap tools turned on. And as for the polar tracking, that is this one here, the circle with like the little pizza icon. If I click on that and turn that off, even if I turn my snaps back on, you'll see how hard it is for me to draw 90 degrees. It's almost impossible. Either way, I can't get exactly 90 degrees, and I definitely can't get 45. So this polar tracking is incredibly helpful in making sure that I always draw on defined angles, whether it be 90 degree orthogonally or on other angles. And again, the little arrow next to that will show the intervals that I'm using. So I'm using 15 degree intervals, but you can go all the way down to 5 if you want. So now we have our snaps turned on. I'm just going to erase these. And what we'll do is we'll continue on. So let's trim, or let's actually fillet some of the corners on this building. So I'm going to type in fillet, and it's going to ask me for the first object, but we want to define the radius of the fillet. So I can change the fillet radius by clicking on where it says radius down here in the commands panel, or simply by typing R on my keyboard and hitting enter. Now I can type in a number, so let's say for instance maybe 1200, hit enter, and now I can select my two lines that I want to fillet. So I want to fillet this line, and I want to fillet this line. And I click that, and now that corner is filleted. We want to do the same thing on this line too. So let's do that again. I can recall the last command in AutoCAD simply by hitting enter or the spacebar. That brings up the last command again. So you can see it's already coming back to where do I want to fillet. I do, however, want to change the radius this time. So I'll type in R again, hit enter, and this time I'll type in 950 because the walls are 250 thick. And I'll go in there and there. And now we have a nice fillet on those walls. So that's filleting. The next one is trim. So trim is a great tool. And let's go back to this rectangle to use the trim command. So we have, these outside walls, and we have these inside lines that we offset from the outside, but they're showing like this, which is not correct. We want to show our walls like this, where we don't have any intersecting lines here. We just see one continuous thick wall. So what we'll do is we'll type in TR on the keyboard, hit spacebar. Then what it's asking us to do is select all the trim objects, which basically, a good rule of thumb is I just select basically everything in the view. It doesn't really matter. So I'll just click once, drag my hand to the left, and click again. Then I'll hit enter or hit spacebar, and it's asking me what do I want to cut. So wherever I hold my mouse, you'll see a little red cross will appear, and that line is going to be deleted. So I can click on that one, I can click on that one, and you can see as I'm doing this, what it's doing is it's now shortening those lines, trimming those lines, and giving us a look similar to how this looks now. So that's the trim command. The trim command works in multiple ways. So I'll extend this line through this circle as an example, and I'll use trim again. I'll select all of these, hit spacebar, and I can just choose to trim very small individual items of this line, segments of this line. It can be the whole line, could be just parts of it, wherever they intersect with another line that is also selected. Again, once you're done, hit escape. Next up with this building, let's select it all, and we'll use the move command. So I'll type in M on my keyboard, hit enter, and it's asking us where do we want to move from, so our base point. So our base point will be this corner, and I'll click this, and I can move this in any direction, and I can type in a number. So in this instance, let's type in 10,000 or 10 meters and hit enter. So now we've moved it from that point to that point by 10 meters. Let's use another tool now, and let's use mirror. So I'm going to select all of these. So let's pretend this is an apartment. I'll select all of this and then type in MIR, mirror, hit enter. And again, it's asking us where is the mirror line, or where's the mirror point? What's the baseline for that? So if I select this corner, you can see if I move my hand up, it's mirroring it, flipping it over left to right. But if I was to go this way, it's flipping it, up and down. So let's go left to right. And then it will give me another prompt saying, do I want to delete the source objects? Yes or no. Most of the time you don't want to, but of course you can. So even if you do want to, you can just key in Y on your keyboard or N for no, and then hit enter. So that's the mirror command. Next up is rotate. So we can select both of these. And actually what we might do first is copy. And copy is as simple as selecting an item, Control C, Control V. Or you can select all the items and type in CO for copy. And the reason why you might want to do this is because you actually want to specify where you want to copy from. Maybe you want to copy from this corner, but maybe you want to copy from the very center. So you could click there and then you could move it over. So in this instance, let's just move it somewhere over here. And then the action will continue, the command will continue until I tell it otherwise. So in this instance, I'll hit escape and that completes the command. Then what we'll do is we'll select all of these two apartments, and let's rotate them. So selected them, RO for rotate, hit spacebar, again, select the base point, where do I want to rotate them from? In this instance, it will be this corner, so you can see it rotates around that corner. If I did that again, and rotated from, say, in between the two apartments, then obviously that becomes the center of rotation. So we'll take this corner, and I could either type in a number, like a degree, so I could say 45, and then hit enter. But in this instance, I just want to rotate it 90 degrees. So I can just move my hand downwards 90 degrees, and there we go. And so let's take this and let's move this now. Next to these two. And then finally, let's use the scale tool. So let's take both of these apartments and let's scale these. So SC for scale. And what it's going to ask is the base point again. Let's say the base point is here. And then you can either type in a value that you want to scale it by. So if you typed in like 0.5, it would be half of the size. If you typed in 1.5, it'd be 1.5 times the size. 2 would be double the size, etc., etc. The other way you can scale, which is very handy, is by a certain size or certain dimension as well. So you could select both of these, type in SC for scale, click your base point, and then what you can do is you can say reference. So if you type in R for reference or click on reference, what that allows you to do is you see I can start drawing again. I can go, all right, I want to start from here, and I want to go from here down to here. And that's like another way of saying half the size as an example, or that could be any length of line. And then once you're done, the command is complete. Okay, so that's good. We've got that. So we've gone through some of the most basic drawing commands and then some of the basic modifier commands. Let's take a quick look at our actual modeling window and set this up a little bit better. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go Control 1 on my keyboard, and that's going to bring up my properties. And your properties may be floating in space, or it may be over this side of the screen, it could be anywhere. But if it is floating in space or whatnot, where it says properties, you can actually just click and drag this window wherever you want. So in my case, I like having it on the side of my screen. So I drag it over to the left-hand side of my screen and let go, and it docks to that side. Next up is the layer managers. We're not touching any of the layers for today, but let's make sure that's sitting in the right position. So I'll click on layer manager, and again, yours may be docked somewhere else. It's not really working for me. But if that's the case, you can dock them to the side by doing the same thing again. Where it says layer properties, you can basically drag that wherever you want around the screen. Actually, there we go. So I've got it just floating in space now. So what I can do is I can auto minimize that as well by clicking this little arrow underneath the cross, clicking this little arrow, and that turns it back into this skinny bar, which will only appear when my hand goes over that bar. It will only maximize. So what I'll do is I'll leave it minimize, and I'll click on where it says layer property manager and drag it again into the side of the screen. like so, and then I'll click on that little arrow, and now that's minimized. So now I've got my properties here, and every time I hold my mouse over the layer properties manager where the text is, it brings up the actual layer properties manager. So that's good. Excellent. Now finally, let's take a look at some text and dimensions. So I'll click on the Annotate tab, and let's just use some dimensions. So firstly, dimensions are very easy. Just click on dimension, or again, type in dim for dimension. And it'll ask me where I want to start and where do I want to end. So I'll click those two, and you can see as I move my mouse away, it gives me the dimension. I can do that again between, say, there, and it gives me a dimension. You can also do this item where I can click once and then click twice. That's the width of one apartment, and drag it to there. And then I can use the continue button. When I click that, it basically picks up the last point of that dimension. And I can click the next one, and it will just continue indefinitely until I decide otherwise. So say those two, and then hit escape, and then the dimension finishes. There are a number of different dimension styles listed in here. For this exercise, just use the Arc 100, but I'll go through these in a bit more detail later about what each one are. Likewise with the text. So let's just use, say, I don't know, 3.5 mil at 1 to 100 as an example. And I'll just click on multi-line text, and I'll take that there, and I might type in apartment in capitals. Apartment 1. And then just click off in the distance to complete the command. And then this works like any other object. So I can drag this around, I can move it, I can copy it. So I'll take this and I'll copy it. And I'll copy it from like this corner of the room. So that way I know in the next corner of the room, when I move it to there, it's actually sitting in the exact same place as the last text for consistency. Just double click on it to edit it. Then you hit escape a couple times, and then we're done. So with that now complete with a brief introduction to AutoCAD, what we'll do is let's save this, and this will become part of your evidence of participation for the first class of the course. And so to save this file, I just go up to the big A and go save as drawing, and I'll navigate to my desktop, and let's call this my initials, so PM-EOP, evidence of participation. And then it would be good if you could either type in the date or your student number. So let's go student number. And actually don't worry about the date, because the date will be there when you upload it. And then we'll say save. And now that's complete. And we know that's complete because you can see up here in this little tab, I've got PM, evidence of participation, my student number. Now that that's done, simply just go to the Dropbox on Student Web and follow the prompts to upload this file there.